She didn't look at the baby. Not at her son. She looked straight at me. And when she spoke, the words felt like knives. That baby cannot be our blood. The room fell into stillness. All I could hear was the soft beeping from the 4 monitor and the distant cry of someone else's newborn echoing through the maternity ward. My arms tightened around Isla. Jordan stood frozen beside me, blinking like he'd just stepped into a life he didn't recognize. There was confusion in his eyes, the kind that crept in slowly, like he wanted to believe something else but couldn't shake what had just been said. But I didn't blink. I smiled. Not a warm smile. Not a kind one. A cold, sharp smile. The kind that says, I see exactly what you're doing, and I'm not playing along. Because what Meredith didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that I had already taken steps. I had already asked for answers. And the truth waiting just beyond the edge of this accusation wasn't the kind she expected. Before any of this, Jordan and I had been just 2 exhausted students who met over a shared library table at the University of Michigan. He had this constant twitch in his fingers like his thoughts were always racing, like he couldn't keep up with the speed of his own mind. I, on the other hand, was still and silent. I listened more than I spoke. I observed. And somehow, that difference became our rhythm. He made me laugh. I helped him breathe slower. We anchored each other. After graduation, we moved to Chicago and got married in a small courthouse ceremony. My father, Henry, stood beside me in a pressed button-up shirt he'd ironed himself. My younger sister, Tessa, wore too much eyeliner and cried the whole way through. Jordan's parents didn't come. Meredith had said it was too sudden. She wanted to wait until she could plan a proper wedding. But we didn't wait. We never did. Meredith's disapproval came quietly. She didn't shout. She didn't insult. Her silence did the cutting. Her words, when she did speak, were always dressed in politeness but edged like razors. Are you sure this is the best you can do, Jordan? Or, she seems sensitive. Marriage needs stability. She never said those things to my face. Always to him. Always just loud enough to echo in the space between us. Still we tried. Every holiday, we invited her. Some she came to, most she didn't. Jordan believed she'd come around. I let him believe it. Then came the years of trying. The waiting. The aching silence between each test. The nights I bled through another miscarriage while Jordan held my hand and said nothing because what could he say? The diagnosis was endometriosis. The doctor said the road would be hard, long, and maybe even impossible. Every time a test came back negative, I felt like my body was betraying me. Meredith didn't say much. She did not send flowers. She did not call. Jordan once told me, she said, maybe it's just not meant to be. He told me that after I had lost the second pregnancy. I never forgot those words. She hadn't even said them to me. My father tried to hold me together from a distance. He called every Sunday just to ask how I was doing, even when I didn't want to talk. My sister Tessa sent me memes and thinking of you texts at 2 a.m. when she knew I couldn't sleep. And then when I had quietly stopped hoping, it happened. I was late. I didn't tell anyone. I couldn't bear another heartbreak. But the second line appeared. Clear. Positive. I didn't even say it out loud. I just held the test out to Jordan while we were brushing our teeth. He stared at it, then at me. His toothbrush fell into the sink. And we cried, mouths full of toothpaste, arms wrapped tight around each other, laughing and shaking all at once. The pregnancy was brutal. I had morning sickness that lasted all day, back pain, nerve tingles, and constant fear that something might go wrong. Every ultrasound felt like walking a tightrope. But every time she was there. Strong. Defiant. Her heart beat loud and proud, like she was announcing herself before even arriving. Meredith didn't say much. She called once to ask about the gender. That was it. No gifts. No congratulations. 17 hours of labor brought Isla into the world. She arrived wrinkled and red-faced with a full head of black hair and wide hazel eyes that stared at me like I was her whole universe. And in that moment, nothing else existed. Not the pain. Not the fear. Not Meredith. Just her. Jordan cried and whispered over and over, "She's perfect. You did it. You did it." The next day, the hospital room was crowded with flowers and nurses and phone calls. My dad's voice came through on video call, cracking with emotion. Tessa cried through the screen, promising to fly up soon. And then the door opened. Meredith walked in, dressed in beige. Perfect hair. No smile. She looked at me. Then at Isla. And something shifted. Her expression didn't change much, but her eyes did. That flicker, subtle, sharp, like she was assessing a threat. She walked closer, crossed her arms. And then she said it. That baby cannot be our blood. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Jordan stood halfway between the bassinet and my bed. His jaw was slack. A nurse, sensing something toxic in the air, silently exited the room. I stayed where I was, Isla in my arms, my heartbeat raging under my skin. I looked at Meredith and realized this was her victory moment. Her way to cut me down completely. Look at her, she said to Jordan, stepping closer. Hazel eyes. Olive skin. She's not you. She's not me. She's not us. Jordan looked at me. And in his eyes, I saw the question he didn't dare speak. That was the part that shattered me. Not her accusation. His hesitation. I straightened up. My voice came out cold and clear. You're not seriously entertaining this, are you? He didn't answer. Meredith didn't blink. If you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't mind a paternity test. I looked down at Isla, asleep now, her little hands curled into her blanket, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling around her name. Fine, I said. Do the test. But when the results come back and you find out you're wrong, I hope you realize you tried to erase your granddaughter from this family on the very day she was born. Jordan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Meredith smiled. Tight and satisfied. Good. I'll arrange it. And she walked out like she hadn't just thrown a grenade into everything we were. The beep of the monitor returned. The room moved again. But something in me had gone still. And this time, I was done staying quiet. The test was scheduled for Monday morning at a private clinic uptown. Meredith's arrangement, of course. Everything about it felt clinical, distant, like a contract negotiation. I sat in the back seat of the car while Jordan drove in silence. Isla was in her carrier beside me, blinking at the ceiling of the vehicle, unaware of the storm she had been born into. I kept my hand on the handle the entire ride, as if gripping something would stop me from unraveling. Jordan hadn't said much since the hospital. He'd kept moving like a man operating on autopilot, changing diapers, warming bottles, texting updates to his mother without including me in any of it. I watched him closely, trying to read the man I had loved for years, but all I could see now was doubt. Not just in me but in himself. And I wondered, if this test came back and told him what he wanted to believe, would he still choose us? At the clinic, the nurse was polite but brisk. She explained the process while handing me consent forms. Jordan held Isla while they took a swab from the inside of her cheek. She flinched, and my heart cracked just a little more. They swabbed Jordan next. Then, for good measure, they asked if I wanted to submit my DNA too. I agreed. I wanted everything clean. I wanted no room for interpretation, no reason for Meredith to come crawling back later with more poison in her words. We left the clinic in the same silence we had entered it. That night, I sat at the edge of our bed while Jordan scrolled through his phone. He didn't look up when he spoke. She just doesn't look like me. The sentence didn't feel like a statement. It felt like a sentence, like something you get handed by a judge when the evidence is stacked against you. I turned to him slowly, my voice as even as I could manage. And what do you look like, Jordan? Your mother? Your father? Do you even know? That was the first time I saw it. The flicker of something buried. His fingers stopped moving. He looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in days. What do you mean? He asked, but the question didn't sound real. I shook my head. I mean that your mother is controlling this whole narrative. And you're letting her. He stood and walked to the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. This is not about her. This is about what's real. About what's true. And you think she's the authority on truth? He didn't answer. Just stared into the dark night beyond the glass, as if it might hold the answers he was too afraid to find in me. The results were sent in a sealed envelope 2 days later. Meredith insisted they be delivered to her house. Jordan agreed. I did not. No, I said flatly when he told me. We open them here. Together. Without her. He looked torn. She paid for the test. And I carried this child for 9 months, I snapped. You really want to play the fairness game with me? He nodded slowly. And that was the end of it. The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Jordan brought it in, untouched, and placed it on the kitchen table like it might detonate. I watched him pace for several minutes before finally speaking. Open it, I said. You're the one who needs answers. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. He pulled the papers out, eyes scanning the first line. Then the second. Then the third. I could hear the scratch of paper in his grip, the sound of truth unfolding in real time. Then he stopped breathing. His shoulders tensed. What? I whispered. He looked at me slowly. Eyes wide. Pale. She's mine, he said. Isla is. She's mine. The relief came fast and sharp, like a breath I didn't know I had been holding for weeks. I reached for Isla's carrier and pulled her close, kissing her forehead, whispering, See? I told you. You are loved. You are real. But Jordan wasn't moving. His hand trembled as he turned the page again. Then again. What is it? I asked. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Then finally he found the words. It says that I'm not biologically related to my mother. Silence. Like the kind that lives between thunder and lightning. What do you mean? I asked, slowly rising from my seat. He handed me the papers. His finger pointed to a line near the bottom. Asterisk note. Subject Jordan Miller shares no maternal DNA with Meredith Miller. Possible non-biological maternal relationship. Asterisk. I stared at the page, my brain refusing to process what my eyes could clearly read. That's not possible, I whispered. She raised me, he said like he was trying to convince himself. She's my mom. She has to be. But the paper didn't lie. A new storm was coming. And this time, Meredith wouldn't be the one asking the questions. The living room was silent as a tomb. Jordan sat on the edge of the couch, his elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow him whole. Isla lay asleep in her bassinet, her tiny chest rising and falling with a peace that felt unreachable. I held the report in my hands, still reading the words over and over again, hoping that repetition would change the meaning. But it didn't. It only carved them deeper. Not biologically related to his mother. How is that even possible? I finally whispered. Is this a mistake? Jordan didn't respond. He looked like he was falling apart in slow motion. She raised me, he said again, like a mantra. She was there for every scraped knee, every science fair, every damn Christmas morning. I sat beside him, careful not to touch him yet. Then maybe that still makes her your mother. DNA doesn't erase memories. He turned to me slowly. But it does erase truth. Before I could answer, his phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both stared at it. Meredith. Of course. The timing was like she had been standing outside the whole time, waiting for the earth to crack. Answer it, I said. He did. Mom. His voice was tight. We got the results. A pause. No, Isla is mine. The test confirmed it. Another pause. But something else came up. He walked to the window as he spoke, his voice growing quieter. It says I'm not your biological son. Silence. Then louder. Harsher. Don't say that, Mom. This isn't some lab error. It's signed, sealed, verified 3 times. I couldn't hear what she said next, but I could see his reaction. His free hand clenched into a fist. He looked like he had been punched in the stomach. You knew, he said, barely above a whisper. You knew and you never told me? He closed his eyes and turned away from me. Why would you do that? He ended the call without another word. For a moment, I just watched him, unsure if stepping closer would comfort him or send him over the edge. She knew, he said, his back still turned. She always knew. She said something about a mistake at the hospital. That she didn't want to believe it, so she never asked. She said she was afraid of what it would mean if she did. I stood up, walking toward him slowly. And what does it mean now? He shook his head. I don't know. I don't know who I am. I don't know if I ever did. There was something in his voice. Grief, yes, but also fear. Not just of the past but of what this would do to the present. To us. To Isla. You're Isla's father, I said. That's who you are. You are the man who held my hand through labor. Who kissed her forehead before she'd even opened her eyes. That part is true. No test can rewrite it. He looked at me, finally, eyes red and shining. But what if the rest of my life was a lie? I reached out, placed my hand over his heart. Then maybe this is where the truth begins. The next day, Meredith showed up at our door. Uninvited. Of course. She looked different. Not put together and calculating, but shaken. Her usual poise had cracked like porcelain. She clutched her handbag like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. "Can I come in?" she asked. Jordan didn't speak. He just stepped aside. She sat stiffly on the armchair, knees together, hands in her lap. The silence stretched so long I started to wonder if she'd speak at all. "I was 23, she finally said. "Your father and I had just moved to Pennsylvania. You were born at Pineview Hospital. It was chaotic. There was a nurse strike the week before, and the staff was new. I remember them wheeling you out for a routine check and then bringing you back an hour later." She paused. "There was something about your eyes," she said. "They looked different." I asked, but the nurse said all babies look different at birth. I let it go. I was exhausted. I wanted to believe everything was fine. Jordan sat across from her, silent. "Years later," she continued, "I found an old photo of another baby from the hospital. Same date. Same room. Different parents." I started to wonder. But by then, I couldn't ask anyone. Your father was gone. Records were sealed. And you were my son. Her voice cracked. You still are. Jordan let out a shaky breath. But you're not my mother. I am, she said fiercely, her first sign of fire since she arrived. Maybe not by blood. But I changed every diaper. I stayed up every night you were sick. I taught you how to tie your shoes, ride a bike, survive heartbreak. Don't you dare say I'm not your mother. He stood slowly. Then why couldn't you show Isla that same unconditional love? Why was I enough for you but she wasn't? Meredith said nothing. I stepped forward then. Because she was scared. Scared of something different. Something that didn't look like her version of perfect. Meredith looked at me, tears finally spilling. I was wrong. 3 words. Late but real. I don't know what to do, she said. Jordan looked at Isla, then back at her. Start by seeing her. Not what she looks like. Who she is. Meredith nodded. And just like that, the narrative shifted. The woman who tried to draw bloodlines in ink now had to face a truth deeper than genetics. We all did. The next few days passed like a fogged mirror. You could make out shapes, meals, diaper changes, restless nights, but everything felt blurry, like our world had been dropped in slow motion. Jordan barely spoke. Not out of coldness, but as if each word cost more energy than he had to spare. He would sit for hours in the nursery, watching Isla sleep, as though she held the answers he was too afraid to ask. I wanted to help him, but every time I reached out, he turned further inward. There's a particular helplessness in loving someone through an identity crisis. You can't rescue them. You can't fix the fracture. You can only sit with them while they bleed. On the 4th day, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier holding a manila envelope. Delivery for Mr. Jordan Ellis, he said. Jordan took it with shaky hands. He didn't open it right away. Just stared at it, his thumb tracing the sealed edge like it might bite. What is it? I asked gently. He swallowed. The full lab report. Including contact information. They said I can request more information if I want to pursue biological family. The words hung in the air like smoke. What are you going to do? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know. Part of me wants to burn it. The other part wants to know everything. He sat down at the kitchen table, the envelope untouched. I sat across from him and waited. After a long silence, he whispered, What if I find them and they don't want me? You're not looking for a replacement, I said. You're searching for roots. That's not weakness, that's human. He stared at me, a flicker of something returning to his eyes. You always say the right thing. Not always, I said. But I mean it now. He opened the envelope. The report was thick, pages of charts, data, lineage breakdowns. But it was the single sheet at the back that mattered most. A name. A woman. 80 miles away. Contact information. No guarantee she was his mother. Just a probability. But in that moment, it was enough. Her name is Rose Harper, he said softly. I nodded, letting him sit with that name a little longer. It felt too delicate to touch. Do you want to call her? I asked. He looked up. Not yet. The next week brought small changes. Jordan smiled a little more. Held Isla a little tighter. Meredith kept her distance, sending a short message once. Something about therapy and how she needed time. It wasn't an apology, not fully. But it wasn't war either. And that was enough for now. One night, as I was putting Isla to bed, Jordan came into the nursery with his phone in his hand. He looked nervous, almost like the man I first met at the university library all those years ago. I think I'm going to call her, he said. I nodded. Do you want me to stay? He hesitated. Then handed me Isla. Can you just hold her while I do? I cradled her in my arms as he stepped out onto the balcony, phone to his ear, the city lights casting gold across his face. He didn't speak at first, just listened. Then finally, I heard his voice crack through the glass. Hi. I think you might be. I don't know how to say this, but I think you might be my mother. He turned his back to me then, hand against the railing. I couldn't hear the rest, only fragments. Yes, Jordan Ellis, born at Pineview. No, I just found out. A pause. A long one. Then his shoulders started to shake. I stood frozen, watching this man I loved unravel and rebuild in the same breath. When he came back in, his eyes were red but steady. She said, she always wondered, that her son was taken for tests and when they brought him back, she wasn't sure. She was 19. They told her she was paranoid. I stepped closer. What now? She wants to meet, he said. She said she still has the hospital bracelet. And a baby photo that doesn't look like the child she raised. He looked at Isla, then at me. But not until I'm ready. She said she's not here to replace anyone. Just to be honest. I kissed his cheek. Then we do this on your timeline. No pressure. No expectations. He nodded. I just needed to hear her voice. To know I wasn't made up. That night, we sat in the nursery again, the soft hum of the sound machine playing ocean waves. Isla curled in my arms. Jordan sitting close. He looked at me and said, Do you think any of this will ever feel normal again? No, I said honestly. But maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe normal's overrated. He chuckled. Not much. But enough. Later, after we put Isla down, Jordan pulled a box from the closet. Inside was the scrapbook my sister made for us. Photos, ultrasound prints, tiny footprints, and a note I had written during labor but never showed him. He opened it slowly. I watched his hands as they shook. The note read, To the father of our daughter. No matter what this world throws at us, I know who you are. And I know who we are. And that will always be enough. His eyes met mine. I forgot you wrote this. I didn't, I whispered. He kissed me then, long and deep, like someone anchoring himself in a storm. We didn't solve everything that night. There were still layers to unravel, truths to face. But we had a beginning again. And that was more than enough. 2 weeks passed before Jordan decided to meet her. Not out of hesitation, but out of reverence. He needed time to steady the emotional ground beneath him, to believe that standing face to face with a living piece of his origin wouldn't collapse the man he had become. We made the drive on a Saturday morning. Isla was buckled in the back, chewing on a soft elephant rattle, blissfully unaware of the collision course her parents were on with the past. The GPS took us through winding backroads, then to a quiet neighborhood that looked like it had aged without ever growing old. Painted fences, oak trees casting dappled light, porch swings that still creaked with memory. Rose Harper lived in a modest white house with blue shutters and wind chimes that sang when we pulled into the driveway. She stood on the porch already, hands nervously wringing the hem of a soft sweater. She looked younger than we expected. Graying hair pulled into a neat twist, eyes that held both history and apology. Jordan opened his door, slowly, like his limbs remembered every betrayal they had once stored. I reached for his hand, but he gently pulled away. Not in rejection, but in resolve. He needed to do this part alone. Rose stepped forward, then stopped, as if unsure what part of this story she belonged to anymore. "Jordan?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. He nodded. "Hi." She covered her mouth with one hand. Her eyes welled up instantly. I've imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. And none of them were right. Jordan glanced back at me. I nodded. Then he stepped forward. She opened her arms, unsure, trembling, but he didn't hesitate. He walked into her embrace like gravity had finally made sense. They held each other for a long time. Long enough for Isla to let out a curious coo from her seat. That broke the spell. Jordan pulled away just slightly, turning toward me. "This is my wife, Elena. And our daughter, Isla." Rose wiped her eyes and stepped closer. She peered into the car seat, lips trembling. "She's beautiful," she said. "She has your eyes." Jordan smiled. "Apparently not from Meredith." Rose winced slightly. "I never meant to take anything away. I didn't know if I would ever get to explain." Jordan nodded. "Then maybe we should go inside." The house smelled of cinnamon and cedar. Every surface was layered with years, photos, books, handmade quilts, vases filled with dried lavender. We sat in a sunroom where the light softened everything. Rose brought out tea and a small tin box. "I kept this," she said, opening it with careful fingers. Inside was a worn hospital bracelet, a photo of a baby boy with a full head of black curls, and a folded note in a nurse's handwriting. "Your birth name was Adam. Just for 2 days. I held you until they said you needed a test. When they brought you back, I told myself you looked different. But they said I was tired." "Delusional." Jordan picked up the bracelet. "This is real." "I'm so sorry, Jordan. I never stopped wondering. I never stopped hoping." He stared at the bracelet, then the photo, then at her. "Why didn't you search for me?" "I did. But there was no record. No acknowledgement anything had gone wrong. I thought maybe I really had imagined it. Or that I wasn't meant to know." He was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not angry," he said finally. I don't know what to feel." "That's fair," Rose said softly. "I'm not here to be your mother. Not unless you want me to be. I'm just here to be honest." We sat for hours. Talking. Listening. Crying sometimes. Jordan told her about his childhood, about the university, about how he met me. About Isla. And eventually about the test. Rose listened without interruption, like each syllable was a gift being returned. When we left, Rose walked us out. "Whatever happens next, I'm here," she said. "Even if it's just for birthdays or postcards." Jordan stepped forward and hugged her again. "Let's not decide today. Let's just let it be." She nodded. "That's more than I hoped for." As we drove away, Isla asleep again in the back, Jordan reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, solid. "I think I needed to see her," he said. "And now?" He exhaled. "Now I don't feel like a mistake. Just misplaced." "That's a start," I said. That night, we didn't talk much. Just curled around Isla on the living room rug, letting the soft sounds of her breathing anchor us. The next day, a letter arrived in our mailbox, handwritten in neat cursive. Inside was a photo of a baby boy with his eyes wide open and a note that read, "You were always real to me. No matter how much the world tried to tell me otherwise. Love, Rose." Jordan stared at it for a long time, then taped it to the inside of his journal. No words. Just quiet acceptance. And slowly, piece by piece, the past began to mend. Not erase, but soften. We didn't find closure that week. But we found connection. And sometimes, that's the better ending. It had been almost a month since the day we walked out of Rose's home, and life had settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. Jordan still hadn't spoken to Meredith. Not directly. There were a few cold, formal messages exchanged, about old medical records, about paperwork, but not about what truly mattered. Not about the lie that had shaped his life. He didn't ask her why. Maybe he was afraid of the answer. Or maybe he already knew. But one morning, A plain white envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address. Just his name, Jordan Taylor, written in sharp, upright handwriting we both recognized. Meredith. He opened it with trembling fingers, standing at the kitchen counter while Isla gurgled in her swing nearby. Inside were 2 pages. Neatly written, no smudges, no tears. As if she'd practiced every sentence to maintain control. He read it in silence. I watched his face shift. Confusion, disbelief, then something colder. I didn't ask. Not yet. When he finished, he handed it to me. Elena, he said. You need to read this. I took the letter and sat down. It began. Jordan. I never thought this day would come, but I suppose everything breaks eventually. You were never supposed to find out. Not because I wanted to deceive you, but because I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I loved you enough, if I raised you well enough, biology wouldn't matter. But the fear never left me. That one day, you'd look at me and see a stranger. The truth is, you were not the baby I brought home from the hospital. I know how that sounds. I've lived with the echo of it for over 30 years. The day after your birth, there was a mix-up. Another mother, Rose Harper, was in the same recovery wing. Our sons were born hours apart. There was confusion with the ID bands. I knew something was wrong when they brought you back after the pediatric check. Your cry was different. You had a birthmark the baby I'd held didn't have. I confronted the nurse. She assured me I was mistaken. That postpartum hormones made mothers doubt what they knew. I wanted to believe them. I was tired. Overwhelmed. Grieving even. I had suffered a miscarriage before you. No one knew. So when they handed you to me, I told myself, maybe this is how fate makes up for pain. Maybe this baby, this boy, is still meant to be mine. I made a choice. I raised you like my own because, in every way that mattered, you were. And yet, I knew one day, the truth would claw its way to the surface. And when it did, I didn't know how to stop bleeding from the inside. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking for anything. I only ask that you know this. My love was never fake. My fear was. My silence was. But never my love. I hope somehow that counts for something. I finished reading with a heaviness in my chest. Jordan sat across from me, staring out the window. The autumn light was soft against his jaw, but his expression was hollow. She knew, he said finally. She knew all along. And she let it ride. What do you want to do? He didn't answer for a while. Then, I want to breathe. Just for today. Without choosing whether to forgive or forget. I nodded. Then that's what we'll do. The rest of the day passed in fragments. Isla played on her blanket, trying to crawl, as if the weight of legacy didn't exist. Jordan sat with his journal, not writing, just turning the pages like each blank one might speak. By evening, he asked if we could visit Rose again. No agenda. Just to sit. So we did. She welcomed us with open arms, already knowing without asking. She didn't push him to talk. She simply held Isla while Jordan watched, like he was trying to memorize the contours of this strange new truth. Eventually, he said softly, she wrote me a letter. Rose blinked. And she admitted everything. Rose's hands trembled just slightly. That's something. I don't know what to do with it, he said. You don't have to do anything today, Rose replied. Just be. You're allowed to just be. Later that night, as we tucked Isla into bed, Jordan whispered, You know what scares me most? What? That if I forgive her it means I excuse it. And if I don't, I'm the one who stays broken. I wrapped my arms around him. You're not broken. You're just rewriting the story. One truth at a time. He nodded slowly. And that night, for the first time in weeks, he slept through until morning. Some stories don't need immediate endings. They need space. And we were learning how to give it. The weeks that followed moved slowly, as if time itself was trying to catch up with everything that had unraveled. Autumn gave way to the first snow. Isla learned to sit up, then babble, then laugh in little squeals that made every hard day a little easier to survive. But beneath the quiet joys of daily life, the question still lingered. What now? Jordan hadn't responded to Meredith's letter. Not out of spite. Not even anger. Just space. That letter had closed one door, but it didn't unlock another. It left them standing in a hallway, between what had been and what could never be again. Then, one evening, a package arrived. Brown paper. No return label. Inside, a small wooden box and another note. This time, the handwriting was different. To Jordan. I don't know what you've been told, but I want you to have this. I don't expect anything from you. I just hope that one day, you'll want to know me not because of what happened in a hospital room, but because you feel a space in your heart where something, or someone, was missing. This belonged to my father. It's not much, but it was passed down with care. I hope, if nothing else, you'll see it as a beginning, not a claim. Rose. Jordan opened the box slowly. Inside was a brass compass. Old, weathered, but still ticking with soft, rhythmic movement. It had initials etched on the back. HH, and a year, 1954. He held it like it might break. She's not asking for anything, he said. I nodded. She's giving you something instead. We sat with that idea for a while. The weight of what it meant to be given something without obligation. Without expectation. It was a kind of love neither of us were used to. That night, Jordan sat at the dining table long after I went to bed. When I came back to check on him, I saw him writing. Not typing, not journaling, writing a letter. To Meredith? I asked gently. No, he said. To Isla. The words hit me like a chord played deep and low. He didn't stop writing. Not even when his hand cramped or the ink ran thin. When he was done, he folded the letter and slipped it into an envelope, writing her name on the front in steady lines. She won't read it for years, I said. That's okay. I need her to know who I was when she was born. Before the dust settled. Before I figured it all out. We put the letter in a small keepsake box alongside her birth bracelet, her first onesie, and the photo of us in the hospital. Me pale and teary-eyed, Jordan leaning over us, Isla wrapped between us like a bright, impossible miracle. That was how the healing began. Not through answers but through choices. We didn't chase Meredith down for more. We didn't press Rose to relive the past. Instead we built the present. We focused on Isla's firsts. First laugh, first snow, first bite of sweet potato. Each one a quiet triumph over everything we'd been through. Meredith reached out again, months later. A message. No pressure. Just a line. If ever you're ready, I'd love to meet her. Jordan didn't reply immediately. But he didn't delete the message either. He saved it. Another thing to decide later. Because life, we were learning, is not a puzzle to be solved in one sitting. It's a mosaic of little reckonings. Some sharp. Some beautiful. All of them real. As spring approached, we planted flowers in the backyard. Isla crawled across the grass, chasing shadows. Jordan knelt beside me, hands in the dirt, laughter finally free on his face. You okay? I asked. I think so, he said. You know what I've learned? What? That family is a choice. Every day. And I choose this. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. I smiled, brushing the soil from his cheek. And that, I said, is all we ever needed. We watched our daughter chase the light between the trees. And in that moment, everything felt like it belonged.